one last point I wanted to get to was obviously the overthrows were kind of triggering to a lot of 49ers fans when we were watching Brock Purdy, sort of flashbacks of the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Is this something 49ers fans need to be concerned about, or is this something that is just, week 2 blues that he'll sort of sort out as he goes forward?
I mean, every quarterback's going to miss throws, and I think it's one of those things where if they were struggling to score points and it cost them the game, then by all means, like, hey, let's talk about this a ton, be concerned, like it's the reason they lost. They still scored 30 points, and it didn't even really feel like it. Like it's like they're almost like, on cruise control to 30 every week that Purdy's starting, pretty much is what it feels like.
Totally.
And it doesn't mean that you just sweep it under the rug entirely. Like, you want to hit those chunk plays when they're there. But to me, I'll be honest, like maybe it's just because the bar has been so low from some of his predecessors. But the fact that he's even seeing and taking some of these shots that a quarterback who, I won't name was a little bit hesitant to do or didn't for whatever reason, to me, that's like a step in the right direction. Even if you're not completing them, I'm like fuck, man, at least he's attempting to take the shot, right? Like he's at least trying to throw the ball downfield. So I think it's encouraging in the sense that he's seeing things, and I think that's why Kyle hasn't been super hard on him or hasn't really, thrown any shade or any, sideways comments when he's asked about it in the media, because I think he's like, well, at least the guy can fucking see what I'm dialing up. I've been waiting 6 years for somebody to,
100%.
So
100%.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. And if it keeps happening, maybe it's something to look at. But at the end of the day, like, these guys all buy into Brock Purdy, I think, because they're all aware, like Ayuk said after the game, he's like, man, like we scored 30 and it didn't even really feel like it. Like, we're all talking about what we can correct, and we look up at the scoreboard and we have 30 points. Like, scoring 30 points in the NFL is really hard. And I feel like since Brock Purdy's been there, the Niners as a whole have made it look really easy, to the point where we're just kind of like we're almost raising the bar too high to where we're expecting perfection, when it's like, dude, this is a quarterback in his second year who was the last pick in the draft, and you're averaging 30 a week every time he's under center. Like, things could be a lot worse. And maybe it's just my, optimistic self with my glass half full goggles stuck on, but a couple overthrows really don't bug me when you're scoring 30 points a week.
No, I completely agree. In my mind, I think that we have been incredibly blessed with Brock Purdy's quarterback play. Especially if you're factoring where he was drafted. I mean, his lore is still building. And it's insane how acclimated. We haven't had to have a discussion about a Brock Purdy loss yet, really. That's insane. So we are building his lore as we're driving the car here, as you normally do in the NFL. And these overthrows, they are glaring because they could have been touchdowns. But they are in the face of a generally efficient and hyper consistent level of performance that we have seen, that in my mind trumps the overthrows, especially if they do not prove to be a pattern of behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you hit a great point too, where it's like, what's going to happen? They're eventually going to lose a game with him. It's going to happen at some point this season, most likely. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it's going to happen. And it's almost like the more he wins, the harder the come down's going to be whenever he ultimately does lose a game. And it's going to be like, everyone's going to look around and be like, what the hell just happened? Like this doesn't happen with Brock Purdy under center. So it's like he can't do any. It's like he is almost setting himself up for more criticism by being as good as he's been. If that makes it sounds crazy, but it's like, as good as they do, it's only going to get worse when the discussion around them losing happens, because it's like, you're just building, like you said, you're building the lore, like you're building this legendary status. When it's like, dude, when he's out there, we don't lose games. I know we had that with Jimmy for a while, or that was the discussion, but it's clearly a lot different with Brock Purdy, where
totally, it feels different than the Jimmy wins. Because the Jimmy wins, it was like, we got the victory, but man, these boneheaded plays really scared me for a minute. And even the overthrows don't feel like boneheaded plays. There was one, there are moments where you feel like you want to go back to the dream list of oh, I wish he had Trey Lance's legs. I wish he could, toss this ball 80 yards down the field. But he's overthrowing his receivers, he's scrambling, and he's performing at such a high level that, like, I think if he had been drafted in the first round, we would be very pleased with our front office for the decision. But the pressure would be mounted at a different degree. And what's different here, or at least what feels different, is that because he was drafted at such a position where there was no expectations effectively, it's almost kind of like we're waiting for the fine print. Like, it's like we're kind of waiting for the moment where he loses it or something, and it just never feels like it's going to happen because the moment never feels too big for him. So I'm curious. I'm very curious to see how this progresses, and I don't think he's going to hit a roadblock against the Giants. And if he does, then you might have some question marks in the media, is what I would presume.
Yeah, and well, the thing that gets me, dude, is that, like, everybody's like, well, eventually he's going to regress, or eventually he's going to come down to earth, and it's like, well, what happens if he gets better? Like, a lot of times people get better the more they play, too. Like, what's the flip side of that? Like, what if he continues to improve and he starts seeing things that, defenses are throwing at him, and he gets more reps under his belt? And I think the thing that I keep coming back to with him is that there's just a lot of little, like, we're getting little, like breadcrumbs left and little clues and hints that get thrown around if you're putting together, like, the puzzle of why Brock Purdy is who he is and how he's been so successful. And as I was going through post-game sound for some work I was doing the other day, I want to say it was Brandon Ayuk. I apologize for not being 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure it was Brandon Ayuk.
I think I know where you're going with this.
They're asking him, like, who talks in the huddle, right? Or, like what goes on in the huddle and stuff like that. Maybe it was McCaffrey. It was McCaffrey or Ayuk, one of the two. I apologize for not remembering who it was. But a prominent 49er skill position player pretty much was just like, no, nobody really talks in the huddle, and if they do, Brock tells them to shut up, And I was like sitting there, and like, it may seem like a very minor thing, but dude, if you're the last pick in the draft, and you're like, a rookie now in your second year, and you're going into a huddle with Hall of Famers and just like blue chip, all pro level talent,
and telling George Kittle to shut up.
Well, George Kittle, like that, it may sound crazy, but that endears you to people. Like, that makes people go like, oh, holy shit, like, this guy's not fucking around. Like, he came here to win football games. And I think that just the way he carries himself, it doesn't really come across like he's this, authoritative figure, because he is a very humble and down-to-earth guy. And he seems like somebody who's very easygoing. But I think just his actions and the way he is and the way he prepares and the way he handles business on the football field, I think those guys immediately saw something. Like, this is the thing, is it's so funny to me because people are like, oh, we have to wait and see, like, everybody's jumping the gun. Dude, these guys all play professional football. They know what good players look like, and they know what bad players look like. And they clearly feel something with Purdy there that's leading them to have the confidence that they do. And there's a big difference between, like, just saying something nice about a teammate to, not be rude.
To not start a firestorm in the media.
Exactly, versus, like, genuine effusive praise. And, like, that's what we've seen is, like, guys, like, you could see just the, like, body language, the way that these guys light up talking about him. And I think that's where I keep coming back to with him, where I'm like, he's doing things behind closed doors that we don't see, whether that's in the film room, meeting rooms, maybe it's the fucking cafeteria where these guys are all eating, where these guys are like, this guy has something. There's some special sauce going on. There's some kind of swagger here. I'm fucking bought in. And if you get Trent Williams and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and McCaffrey to buy in, who am I to question that? Like, you've clearly done something right to earn the respect of all these guys in such a short amount of time.
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes, sir.
100%. And honestly, I'm excited to see him build his legacy because I think it's only going to get better.